let's take it from page 147. We may, in fact, run off the page, and we'll need to make another photocopy. We'll do our best. It was a busy morning. All right, so last thing we said was we jumped into this discussion about a Torah from the Baal Shem Tov, where it says on the pasuk Breishis bara Elokim Ace, right? And he starts to explain that what is Ace. That first of all, Ace is from Aleph V'ad Taf, right? And he said that Breishis refers to Chochmah, because the Targum Yonasan of Breishis is B'Chochmah. And what he said is that essentially Hashem cloaked his Chochmah into an Aleph, and with it he created the world of Atzilus. Then he cloaked that Aleph, which basically Atzilus, into a base, and he created Bria. And so he went into a Gimel, and through this he created all the worlds, right? And this is what it means, Breishis bar Elokim Ace, from Aleph until Taf, which is 22 letters. But then he goes a little bit further, and he explains that these 22 letters also have a gematria aspect to them, right? So if you get all the way up to Taf, you get to 400. This is where we left off yesterday, that these 400 is a kind of very significant number that we see throughout the different Maimarim, and we said it's like the idea of the 400 Batei Dinim, the 400 men of Esav, the 400 shekel kesef of Ephron, Hachiti. You remember all this from yesterday, right?
What's Batei Dinim again?
It's like houses of din.
Oh.
And the idea is that it's kalim, thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker levels of kalim. Just as I said, the olive gets enclosed to the base, and then the olive and the base together get enclosed into a gimel. So it's like Russian dolls. It's like more and more filters after filters after filters. And this is what it means that the Breishis bara Elokim Ace, right? Through all these 400 filters. And then we said, let's see exactly where we left off here. I think not too far. Yeah, so let's just take from the top of the page, 147, right? V'zeh shekasuv Breishis bar Elokim Ace, shu chav beis osios min aleph v'ad tav. These are the 22 letters. U'besocho ruchniyuso yizbarach shenikra shamayim. Right, and there's the Ace hashamayim. In other words, inside of that Ace is the shamayim. This is how the Baal Shem Tov was learning this pasuk, which means that there's spirituality inside of there. But but that spirituality is wrapped up in all these letters, and that's what it means. Bara es haaretz, right? That with this shamayim, right? He bara es haaretz. Es shamayim ves haaretz. That through the spirituality gets encloaked. Shupol inyani chomer haaretz. This is the idea of the materialism, which, as we said, is these 400 worlds, 400 garments from Aleph until Taf. And that's where we're going to take it inside. Shu eretz tachti she'ein lamata mimenu. 5 lines down. This is the lowest of the worlds, and there's no lower than it. This is the idea of Eis ha'aretz. V'achar kach chazar HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'niztatu b'kama kisuyin b'kama klifin. And then, if that wasn't enough, Hashem then cloaks himself further in many coverings and many klippas, which is like shells. The inun tohu v'vohu v'choshech v'tahom. Right. The next pasuk goes on and says that there was these levels of darkness, tohu, vohu, choshech, tahom, which is basically confusion, etc., and darkness and the depths. These are later stages in the creative process. After there was the 22 letters containing Shemayim, which was already the Aretz of the 400 levels, there's then a further descent. And that's what it says, Va'aretz haisa tohu v'vohu v'choshech al pnei tahom. The next verse goes on to say, or the same verse, it says that there was the earth, which was, what is the earth? The 400 levels of garments. That earth was tohu v'vohu v'choshech and tahom. So it then goes plunging further into darker states. Right? So, in other words, just infinite tzimtzumim, basically. V'kol zeh naisa aydei shem Elokim. And all of this is because of the name Elokim's influence on the situation. That's why it says Breishis bara Elokim. Right? So the idea of Breishis, which is this chokhmah, and it creates all these worlds and these infinite descents. How did it happen? Because who created it? Elokim created it, which is the inyan of tzimtzumim and concealment. Shehu inyan hagvura v'tzimtzum. Right? Basic stuff here, yeah?
So in addition to the tzimtzum of the 400 levushim,
Yeah.
there's also a further darkening?
Heavy duty
of this
darkening.
world,
Yeah.
specifically?
But not just this world for six. I mean, it's basically going into levels of klippa. I guess, but it seems to me like the 400 levels is just the aretz, which is the chomer haaretz. It finally gets down to gashmias, but then you're going to get into tohu, vohu, choshech, tahom. These are already like deep levels of klippas, things that can be enlivened even with the gashmias, which is sort of not just klippas noga, but opposing Hashem. Right? So furthering the descent. How did it come from the Shem Elokim? Bereshis bara Elokim.
So Hashem creates this physicality and it also creates the ability for negativity to exist within the physicality.
Yeah. Umizeh muvan. From here, it's understood. Sheyeshnu orein sof kafishu begilu lifnei atzimtzum. Going back to our conversation, which we're discussing the Otsar, the great treasure house of God, which is the ultimately the Orein Sof that's Lamai Adin Kates. Remember the part of the Orein Sof that goes up? And he says, from all this is understood that there's the Orein Sof, Kafishu Begil Lifnei Atzimtzum. So there's Orein Sof as it is revealed, which means that the Mahus of godliness is out and shining and showing. And this is what it looks like before the Tzimtzum, before there you start with the contractions. V'kafi shemevi lahalan ba'maimer she'or elyon pashut memalias kol metzios. Right? He quotes the famous beginning of the Eitz Chaim, where he explains that before the Tzimtzum there was the or elyon pashut, this high simple light. Simple means it's not divisible because it's not a contractible light. Right? It's an infinite Ein Sof light, so we call it Pashut, in the sense that it's not compound, made up of parts. And it's Mamaleas Kol Metzias, the would-be Metzias of the world, which is basically the place where self and I is going to exist. Before the Tzimtzum, that whole place of what's going to be the Metzias is totally nullified and negated because there's an Or Elyon Pashut, which is filling all the Metzias. This is like the beginning of the Eitz Chaim. And the Rabbi Rayatz quotes this because he's explaining that's the scenario before the Tzimtzum. But after this, there comes the Tzimtzum, which is Elokim, and then you wind up getting that light going into the Aleph, and the Aleph into a base, and the Aleph and base into a Gimel, etc. And as the Maimer quotes here, behelem acher helem, be'iloy acher iloy, bechinas heder haor beheder agiloy, which means once the tzimtzum happens, then there's something called a concealment after a concealment, right? And a absence after an absence of light, and absence of revelation. So these are all those 400 houses and the Tov, Avo, Choshech, and Tahom. But this is after the tzimtzum. So now, this is something, if you were in the morning class, we actually tapped into this. Looking at the exact quote of the Rebbe Rayatz, when he's talking about the descent that takes place with the light, he says that there's two different things. There's Heder Ha'or and Heder Ha'giloy. Right? And the Rebbe points out that they're distinct from each other. An absence of light and an absence of revelation. Does anyone remember from the morning class what the distinction between those two things are? That's always a good guess. Whenever there's two things. Here, let's take a look. Hedra or behedra agile. Hedra or, what does it mean the absence of light? Hanu shesilek oro alatzad. So the hedra or, he explains here, is basically putting the light on the side. This is referring to essentially the tzimtzum arishon. The first part of removing the light. There's an absence of light. It's just that he's going to take all the light from the tzimtzum arishon, which is a complete removal of the light. The heder agiloi, and then there's something called an absence of revelation. Hainu, what does that mean? Shafilu ba'makom shabo nimtza or. So now he removes all the light, but then he brings it back, a little ray, which is called the kav. And this kav, which similarly now there's this revelation of light. First of all, it's not the same light that was there before, because the light that was there before was an or elyon pashit that's mamali kol hametzias. It negates any experience of anything else. This light, adarabba, it's responsible for the metzias, right? So the helam ha'or is that first and foremost all the light that was there before is taken away, and now there's a helam of Giloi, there's an absence of Giloi. Even the light that now remains, it's now in the Shabo Nimtza, or the place where the light is found. It's in such a way that the light is not really revealed. Meaning to say that the light gets further and further concealed, that you don't even realize as you go down and down, lower and lower, that it even is the light of God. It looks like a world. It looks like a thing. It looks like something other than that. So the light that's making it is not even Begiloi. It's a header of Giloi, absence of Giloi.
But Gilui is the world. Like, could we say that?
No, it's a Giloi of Elokus. In other words, it's that there's a header of, there's an absence of revelation of godliness. The fact that you're seeing the world means you're seeing a lack of revelation of godliness.
Are we saying the Or Pashut, that's a Gilui?
What's that?
Is the Or Pashut, is that a Gilui?
No, the Or
How
Pashut,
is that now?
the Or Pashut we're saying is the Or, and that's completely removed. Now, what's the
That's
Gil?
not the first step.
That's the first step.
Yeah, but the Or itself, that was not a Gilui because it's not receivable by anyone. So it's not.
But what again
The first of the Pashut one.
is removed. Header Haor.
Before it's removed, before the header or just that light, that's not revealed to anyone. That's not revealable. That's not like receivable.
We're not saying this will be revealed to someone, but it's on the contrary. It's the Or Elyon Pashut is Mamali Kol Metzias, right? It is the only thing that's revealed, right? Not revealed. It's revealed to God. In other words, Hashem's in a state of revelation as opposed to a state of contraction.
Because that's my question. Can we say revealed as without referring to someone
Yes.
receiving it?
Yeah.
Okay. Because then that makes sense. Because the hedera agilu means we have removal of revelation, but we also have an increase in revelation. Because now that the tzimtzum is there, someone can actually receive the light. So
That's not what he's referring to. Yeah. You can play with the words and make it say a lot of different things, but here he's saying that he's trying to explain that that light which was there before, it goes into two stages of contraction. One is now that's not even there at all, and that which remains, there's no revelation that it's godly. Ba'al pizeh mevar ba'amaymer ha'in d'l'mayla ad ein kates. And in saying those words, he's trying to describe for you what's actually called light, which is l'mayla ad ein kates. In other words, it sounds like he's describing darkness. Right, but in this description that we just said, it's a hedera or hedera giloi. What's he describing? He's describing the or ein sof that's lamay ad in kates. Because shem shnis bar lifnei be'inyan lamata ad in tachlis. Right. So in other words, and as we said before, the fact that you don't see it and that you see an absence of revelation, whether that's the absence of the entire revelations of the or ein sof to begin with, which is like the tzimtzum itself, right? That's what you're really seeing is the or ein sof that's lamay. Because it's like we said yesterday, it's light going away from you. It's going so high that it's imperceptible. And even when it now starts to fill all these worlds from Aleph until Taf, the fact that it's getting lower and lower and lower and lower, so you're seeing more and more Metzias of the worlds, less Giloi, right? Like we said, less Giloi Eloki, right? So what you're actually seeing more of is the Or Ein Sof that's Lamay Lamayla. The less you see of it, it's like the more it is shining.
The original lights.
No, the Or Ein Sof that's lamay, not the original light. No, no, the original light which was filling all the Metzias. Which light is that? That's called the Or Ein Sof that's lamata mata ad ein tachlis. That light which shines is called the lower aspect of the Or Ein Sof. When all of a sudden the light doesn't shine and you see the tzimtzum, you're not seeing an absence of light, you're seeing the presence of a light which goes infinitely high. Okay. And the lower it goes, and the more concealed it is, the more of a revelation you're seeing of it.
So, does that mean there's infinite tzimtzum?
Yeah.
Even above the first tzimtzum?
No. Why do you say that?
Because you're saying that the light keeps going more and more removed from the space of void, which actually means higher and higher.
So you're saying like that, like in other words, after the tzimtzum, there's an absence. What shows up next is, so to speak, lower, because it's showing you not just an absence; it's showing you like something else besides God. It's a total heter agiloi. So that must be coming from, to your point, that must be coming from even like something higher than the tzimtzum.
Well, it's like an absence within the absence.
Right. Yeah.
Rabbi, this is not just perception, this is actuality. It's not just that we don't see it. It's actually functional not just perception.
So be it. You following? Okay, let's go on to the next paragraph. Any questions so far? It's not the easiest topic. Let's add on this notion of the tzimtzum and a concealment which goes infinitely high. Al pi hamavur b'Torah harav hamagid berimzei Torah parshas ba'aloscha. I do want to make a little point that we just introduced the Rav Hamagid, right? It's a very, very common theme, pretty much in every Basi Lagani mimer, starting from the Rebbe's first one, that he teaches whatever theme he's trying to teach by taking us through Rebbe after Rebbe in order. So in other words, when he starts in the first Basi Lagani mimer that the Rebbe taught, again, there's a Basi Lagani from the previous Rebbe of 20 chapters, and then there's the Rebbe's project of explaining it. The first one he explained, when he starts to give his explanation of this whole idea, over there he's talking about what's the Iker Shechina. That's like the topic of the mimer, because that's the first chapter. And he starts to explain, well, the Alter Rebbe says this about it, and the Mittler Rebbe says this about it, and the Tzemach Tzedek says this about it. He literally goes and describes an idea through each one of the Rebbe's Torah. And what's the idea? Because really, at the end of the mimer over there, you learn that, surprise, like the whole idea is that the Rebbe is the 7th generation, and the whole mimer is coming to explain to you that just like Moshe brought the Shekhinah down to earth, so too is the job of our generation to bring the Shekhinah down to earth. And therefore he goes through each Rebbe, basically showing that each one of them was sort of a stage in the bringing the Shekhinah down to earth until it got to him. And then every mimer that he says after that, he does the same thing. So what do we just teach about this notion of from Aleph until Taf? You remember which Rebbe we brought that in whose name? The Baal Shem Tov. And now we're up to the Maggid. So all of a sudden he's going to bring a Torah from the Maggid. It's not like a different teaching. He's teaching you one idea. He just shows you how like this idea is drawn through each Rebbe. It's pretty much an amazing feat. So what does he say over here? Regarding this Torah of the Maggid, in order to deepen this notion, on the Pasuk, Aseh lecha shtei chatzotzros kesef, right? There's a mitzvah that we're supposed to, in the Midbar, to make 2 silver trumpets, right? And the word for a trumpet is chatzotzros, right? You're supposed to make 2 silver trumpets. So on this pasuk, the Maggid of Mezrich, the student of the Baal Shem Tov, he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu asa kama tzimtzumim derech kama olamos, that God made many contractions through the pathway of many worlds, kadesh achdus im ha'adam. This is actually kind of, Rafi, a point that you were tapping into. And he says, why did Hashem make all these contractions? Why did he do it? Why did he hide himself? And Hedera or Hedera Giloi, really? Because he wanted to make Achdus with man. He wanted to have a relationship with man. And that's the reason behind all these contractions. Because if he would have been as he is, sort of in his natural state, he can't have a relationship with anybody because no one can handle his shininess, Bihiraso, like his glory, his great light. It would have been impossible to actually create a relationship. So in order to make the connection, he had to hide himself. It's much like we say regarding like a teacher and a student. If the Rebbe is going to just reveal himself like as he is, no one's going to have any idea what he's talking about. No one's going to be able to stand in the same room with him, quite frankly. So in order to make a relationship with us, he sort of, what you think is the Rebbe's teaching, this grand light. It's actually, as far as the Rebbe's concerned, he's like contracting himself infinite number of times in order to say things that fit into our brains. And so Hashem, obviously, kol shekain v'kal v'chomer, in a different lahavdil level, maybe, that he makes this contraction for the sake of making this relationship.
Like yourself.
V'adam tzrich lifrosh es atzum mikol hagashmias ad shiyale derech kol ha'olamos. Now, what's your job in this? So Hashem made all these contractions. In the end of the day, it didn't really go so well, the plan. Because did Hashem make a relationship with us by making himself so small? On the contrary, it looks like all of a sudden we could totally forget about him and run amok because he contracted himself so much that we think that we run this place and there's no God whatsoever to begin with. He made a world that looks totally independent. So he was trying to help us here. He came so far towards us. What do we do in order to sort of make the connection? That we come and actually reciprocate and have a relationship with him. This is by a person separating himself from the Gashmias, right? You have to realize that this whole thing, it's filled with Gashmias, you can have a body and you can have a perception. But if you just run amok, going after your Nefesh Bahamis, you're not going to create a relationship with God, and you're going to sort of go against the whole opposite of the kavan of why Hashem made this whole thing to begin with. You have to sort of remove yourself as much as you can from Gashmias. So he sort of made himself into, as we say, from an ayin into a yesh, and you've got to make yourself from a yesh into an ayin. That's consensual. You got to make it consensual. It's a relationship, right? So our job is to separate ourselves from the Gashmias.
Otherwise it's rape.
We don't want that.
No, but it's
Right? So he says you have to go up all the worlds. You have to, in other words, all the same contractions that Hashem made, you have to uncontract them. So you know what they call a prophet? They call him Meshuga, right? He's in the Tanakh, a prophet's called crazy. In fact, it's a whole chapter in Basi where he explains this. But it says God also he also took off his clothes and prophesied. You know this idea? All the prophets, they prophesize naked. What's the idea of prophesizing naked? Put your clothes on. You know what I'm saying? So, no, because the ending of prophecy is basically as close as you can get to God, right? Hashem is literally communicating through you. The idea of taking off your clothes is undoing all those 400 contractions with the tohu and the vohu and the choshech and the tahom. Like all those levels that he came down to you have to undress them. Because you have to basically go back and find him. Now, if you really, really undress all the way, you prophesize. And actually, there's this idea that the neshamas, let's say, of the Avos and Moshe, they come from Atzilus, which means you could be standing in this physical world and you can go and shake Moshe's hand. He was a physical being, right? And yet, what was he? All the contractions and the layers of what's the word I'm looking for? Compression. That wasn't the word I'm looking for, but it's a good word. Filters, I was talking about. It's really like filtering, curtains upon curtains upon curtains. All those things, you can basically remove the consciousness of each filter and put yourself back into a state where, while you're still in Gashmias, you haven't taken off the actual garments of the physicality, but the confusion and the limitation of godly revelation that goes through all these garments, you can actually remove them. So here comes Moshe walking around. He is a neshama of Atzilus, experiencing the level of consciousness of Atzilus while he's in his physical body. And so Avram as well. And the truth is I forget which one it is, but one of the mimers of Basi the Rabbi says, and the Rabbeim of Chabad, Chassidus, they were higher than the neshamas of Atzilus. Their neshamas were mamash from before the tzimtzum, which means you can take off even the tzimtzum harishon. If you're a Rebbe of Chabad, I wouldn't try it at home, and therefore you're having an experience in this world where you have undressed yourself all the way past the point of basically the tzimtzum itself, and here you are having met God the other direction. He cloaked himself, you uncloaked yourself, and you're prophesizing basically. God is one with you. Okay, usually in all the Sfarim over here, he says, he's in the Shamba. By the way, Esher Sfir Zagnuz before Atzimtzum is also called Atzilus de Klalus, right? So maybe that's.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah, yeah, no, for sure.
So in information theory, the process of taking an obvious signal and making it not obvious is encryption. So it's you have the layers of Tzimtzum, the layers of Klipa being added. It's like adding layers of compression and encryption. So you have to uncompress and decrypt.
You got to unzip it.
Same like undressing.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Yes, we have beautiful new mashalim from Torah Chadasha of the Gashmias world to help us understand these things. No, it's true. The Rabbi said many times that one of the functions of technology coming to the world was that we would now have new mashalim and ways of understanding God. You're always, Baruch Hashem, bringing them. It's very important. He needs to undress his part and go up. He says, derech kol ha'olamos, got to go all the way up. You can go all the way up. And you can have unity with Hashem. And he says, then you're called a man. In other words, if you're not getting up there to the Esher Sfiros HaGenuzos, you're not necessarily a man. What you are is a dam. Adam is half dam. So if you don't reach back up through all the olamos and take off all your clothing, you're dumb. right? You're dumb. Whereas if you can get there and make the relationship with God, you become Adam. With the Aleph. Ki Adam shalamata hurak dalid mem. The man down below, before he sort of undresses, he's just a dalid mem, which spells dam, but he says here it means the union of dibur and machshava, right? V'kishmizdabek b'akadosh baruch hu alufo shel olam. Now when you're going to cling to God, why is Hashem called the Aleph? Because the word alufo shel olam means the master of the universe. The word Aleph actually means God. So then, naise Adam, then you become this dibur and machshava, which is fused with elokus. You're not just Adam walking around, because Adam hu nefesh. You can still be a living, live, talking human being, but you're like an animal. You're not an Adam, because Adam hu nefesh. Animals also have dam. And in this sense, a human animal, he also has dibur and machshava, right? But the point is that he doesn't have elokus. So you have to make it so that your dibur and machshava becomes God's dibur and machshava, the machshava and dibur of the alufo shel olam. That's what's called an Adam. V'zeu shtei chatzos kesef. Now we can go back to the Maggid's Vort, and he's explaining what does it really mean. You have to make 2 silver trumpets. Sha'adam, because chatzos ros means chetzi. In other words, it has the word chetzi twice in it, right? An allusion to 2 halves. Sha'adam hu chetzi tzura, and actually chatzos ros literally means chetzi tzura. So it's actually the word chatzos ros is pretty much the exact word as half of a form. Shtei chatzos ros means 2 half forms. So what does it mean, make 2 half forms? The Maggid is telling you, you're not just blowing your horn. This is a serious operation. Sha'adam hu chetzi tzura shurak dam. Man is only half of a form, who's the dam. But aleph levad kiviyachol gamkin enu tzura shlema. And by the way, God alone is also only half of a form, right? This reminds us also of the Indian of the machsis hashekel, similar in Yanimur said there, but we won't go into that right here. But aleph itself is only half of a form. God also is lonely. He wants a relationship. So he's missing something without you. Amnam kishizdabku yachdav naiset tzura shlema. But if this aleph that Hashem has and your dam, you come together, then you become a whole form. Now you're whole. This is like really what it's. That's the dira b'tachtonim. This is like the true God. Umizem muvan sha'av sheishnam kamatzim tzumim helam acher helam chulei. So now what are we learning from all this? That even though there's so many contractions that we spoke about, and there's helim acher helim. We talked about this idea of concealment after concealment. Helim ma'or, helim ma'giloi, mikom makom, ein ze ba'ofen shahor, einu shayach l'makom shabo mis'alem. However, it does not mean that the light which is removed from that place is not shayach to being in that place. Because the whole reason Hashem removed the light from that place was not so that it should stay concealed. It was that he should pick a place which is now a new dimension, a lower world, but not so that it should stay sort of unconscious, right? The idea is that if you can undress and yet stay in a human form, you can undress and keep your spheros, keep your body. It means in that very place where the Orin Sof that's Lamai Lamaila created a state of helam and absence, it's intended and designed so that you should be able to fill that place with the aleph of God, and it should make a whole form. Hainu, we're out of time. Right at the end of the page. I'll make more copies for tomorrow.